Greetings, friends, crew members of our beloved, polluted, and only spaceship. Since the last time we met has taken another turn about its imaginary axis, and it keeps on generating news in full development. And the war that was triggered by the mister that lives in the White House is now being manifested with what we expected, the reactions from those that eventually could be affected by that. To be able to play with free commerce or fair trade, the famous fair commerce and blah blah blah, and then having the tariffs that you cannot compete with the markets in this way is monumental hypocrisy and double discourse. Everybody else is not calm because it's not many people who can do this. In this way, for example, today in Moscow and Washington, they are starting to manifest different rounds, not of negotiations, but boxing rounds that has different aspects in the market which gives indecisiveness. And perhaps the United States may be losing their capability to be competitors, or maybe they have a lunatic in the White House that does not understand anything apart from the fact that he has become a billionaire from the private sector. But he plays with the laws, particularly in the United States, and other laws are played in different longitude and latitude. Let's see the news that have been happening in full development. We have a shark fight, and it's at a big scale that it's happening. What we have here says very clearly that Russia is doing counter in order to have the new round of American sanctions. And in this sense, the screen shows the comments by the China media group and the reaction that has happened in Russia, which is not very small things. In the European Union, they have the flags almost at half-mast, and in the United States, their position is irreducible. This means that as the strong nations that are part of NATO are also affected by this, because it's not only about economy, because about geopolitics is also linked to this. Therefore, Russia, for example, decided that the American dollar is going to be set to one side because they're going to pay with their own currency. We have the mosque, which is beautiful in Turkey. The Turkish people are speaking harder because they are aware of their geopolitical stance and they want to make their attitudes good. If we're good for NATO to be able to have advanced war, then we also have to be good at the moment where we can have commercial negotiations. We have the Reichstag, that when we were there, they still did not have the dome that was part of the war things that happened. And look at this, Angela Merkel and Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. President Vladimir Putin stated that the tariffs against Russia have been a counterproducing measure, and he has called the United States government so that he knows that their sanction policy is going to fail. They will not work, and Russia and the United States have to keep on have normal cooperations. Putin's comments happened after the United States sent the last round of tariffs against organizations and Russian individuals, and freezing their assets in the United States, and they will not allow the United States citizens to have commerce with them. The tariffs proposed for the Chinese imports are also big news. The economies in general are growing, and they think that the imposition of tariffs by the United States is one of the biggest difficulties that they are going to right now. We have the United States that economically is feeling it, but according to what Putin has said and the actions by Russia, the Russian president is already having movements in order to be able to honor his commitment for the re-election, to be able to defend the country from the impact of these sanctions. And this is economic warfare with a silencer. The first measure has been to strengthen Russia with Iran, the European Union, and Turkey. The United States already imposed sanctions against Iran and Turkey, allegedly because they did not free an American passenger. After the United States carried out their sanctions against Iran, Russia stated that they will have a commercial cooperation with Iran at a normal or better level. 13th of August, the Minister of Foreign Relations, Sergei Lavrov, flew to Ankara to be able to meet with Mavlut Cavusoglu to be able to jointly criticize the sanctions produced by the United States. Minister Lavrov said that the sanctions of the United States against Turkey are an obstacle for this, and this is generating other aspects. The proposed tariffs for Chinese imports are going to affect the users, the final users, with higher prices. Arnold Kamler, president of Kent International. Every year, 17 million bicycles are sold in this country, and I think the biggest majority of the bicycles sold in any type of time frame or era, and we sell them in the United States to other foreign countries, and as such they are part of American life. We are going to do anything in our power to be able to do this, but our margin is not big enough, and we would have to increase our final customer's price, and this will be inflationary. The prices of bicycles have been risen in 20 to 30%. The bicycle market should not be left to one side. And Arnold Kamler, the president of Kent International, stated, the tax would be on everything. What would be the effect? I assume that our business could fall up to 30% with these new tariffs. And this would mean that I would have to give massive firings in my office, and he's speaking very candidly. It's very interesting to be able to obtain 5 or 6 years to be able to reposition ourselves. China has become a very dominant provider, and having an opportunity of getting others is what we will have to do. And then Joe Shimi, the president of the Products for Children's Products, stated millions of babies are dying because they are dying in unsafe areas for the children. The parents will have to spend $50 or $100 more for a crib, and they will not be able to pay for this. The average family in the United States that live with food stamps, listen to this very carefully, the average family lives thanks to food stamps. The women, the babies, and the children are trying to find other type of assistance for their parents because they will not be able to give them. They will buy used products, which will generate a risk, which will be unsafe for the children. And here we have Amanda Walker, who states it's going to be expensive for everybody. It's going to be very expensive for the final consumer. Everybody's going to feel it in their pocket. Today they included automobile parts, but even buttons, small electronics, and other things. And everybody is going to suffer with this, and we will not have the benefits of being Americans because we're going to feel this. We have people outside the World Trade Commerce Organization in the United States, and we have the press conference in the Chinese capital. Through the spokesperson, Lu Kan stated the following: the problem is with El Salvador. El Salvador established diplomatic relations with China with regards to having a one united China. It is justified and very justified, and we ask the United States to look at this correctly, the diplomatic relationships between China and El Salvador. Look at what Trump gets his nose in. In the Americas, we have relationships which are very fruitful, and this did not affect but promoted the security of the region. After the 21st of August, China has their 26th country that they have diplomatic relationships with in the Americas. And this is why it was affect the regional things? Absolutely not. Lu Kan, who is a spokesperson of the Foreign Office in Salvador, together with the United Nations and other 177 countries, recognized the principle of a unique China. As such, they establish normal relationships with China. They adjust to the historical tendencies and is aware with international norms that are part of this relationship. El Salvador, as other populations, is a country that has very critical things whenever they want, and they're sovereign. Could it be said that they are being part of the internal affairs of China, of El Salvador on behalf of China? No. It is evident who is doing this. And he does not name the country, but he is talking about Trump. And then there's another question. For China, Latin America, and the Caribbean is an important independent force and in development in a multipolar world and a globalized economic world. China would like to offer an advice for that certain people would respect the right from other countries to decide their own internal and external decisions. This is an allusion to Trump. China and Hong Kong are lowering with regards to operation, with regards to the cooperation with United States and China, which have not led any fruit. Look at this new China. It is fantastic. We have to see, and you had to see what it was when we went for the first time. We have a statue of a bull, which is the stock market symbol, which is part of that, is not very close to reality currently. The people who are working on the offices, we have the Founcing Index, we have the exchange rate in Hong Kong, and the people that have some investments are looking at the computer screens in order to be able to monitor the versatile markets and see whether the funds are there in order to have an adequate and happy retirement and if they're working correctly. The fact is that the screens show that the composite index of Shanghai with active commerce, up until now, we have a tower which is characteristic from Shanghai, apart from the mega skyscrapers. We have a lot of worries here because there's an economic warfare, and the operators in those cubicles and those that have investments are interested to see how things pan out. The screen shows the composite index in Shanghai during active commerce, and the people monitor the stock markets to see how their retirements fund are that they have invested in. We have the line with Asian markets in general after the commercial negotiations between China and the United States did not have any advance. At midday, the Hansheng index fell in 0.7%. The Trump administration, on the other hand, wants to pay the political cost of November because of its tension with China, and they will have to pay for this. And Zach Cohen, the executive director of Interway, says the private sector of the United States is extremely worried by this problem because it's going to complicate plenty of things that are currently working correctly in the economy of the United States. This idea would transfer the cost to the consumers because of these new taxes. And we will have tariffs that counteract the main idea of the Trump organization that decided to have low taxes. Zach Cohen, the executive director of Interway, analyzes that the reason is because the administration is divided. There are two very clear factions within the Trump administration. We have a protectionist faction that is holding their place in the White House, and then there's another free trade commerce faction that I believe is the one that part of the Treasury. Then he went on to say we have the assembly lines. When the observers see the relationship between the negative balance, which is the case, and how the White House is looking at it right now, they look at the type of things that are doing. Because somebody's winning, and if somebody's winning, somebody's losing. But international commerce, everybody wins, usually, and that's what we're missing. We have to go back to that. And perhaps Zach Cohen stated that there's going to be a political cost that will have to be paid by the Trump administration in the next legislative elections of November, because the majority of the producers that are being prejudiced are also agricultural producers, and they are voting. And they perhaps will vote against the Republican Party, and they will be able to make them pay for the mistake that Trump and the party made. Here we have people walking, people trying to adapt to reality, and the senators are emitting warnings to Trump. We have the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. I cannot think what Mr. Manafort has said in order to deserve a pardon. He has not even gone to jail yet. I think that the reality, he needs to win that pardon. He needs to say that he learned his lesson. A pardon is given to a person that does something in lieu of what they have done, and not because of political actions. So this is an influence package that Trump has. Every time that their lawyer declared that he was guilty on something, it's going to be a bad day. I do not know what it says there. I do not know what this has to do with the payments and what type of illegal payments were done. Once again, the point is the central question. Did this campaign from the Russians and coordinated in order to give benefits in order to be able to pirate in the DNC from the emails and the Podesta emails? If they did so, the full brunt of the law should fall of them. But I have not seen any evidence of this happening. And this has always been the central question in this case. Then Senator Patrick Leahy also gave declarations and stated, he's a very old man, and he is prepared.
The president could, but I think that would create...
The presidents could do this, but I think that this would generate a reaction. What I could say is that Watergate, look at this metaphor, Watergate would be completely written, and it's plenty of these cases from state tribunals that they cannot grant a pardon. If I was his advisor, I would tell him that this process should be going on. The things are hitting Trump directly now.
If I was his advisor, I'd say...
I cannot think that Mr. Manafort has done something to deserve a pardon, is what Lindsey Graham said. Patrick Leahy said that giving a pardon would be a Watergate for everybody involved. And these are the things that are opening up, and this administration has hit rock bottom. The main executives of the United States are talking about the Trump administration. In a letter signed by 59 presidents of big companies in the United States, they expressed their worry because of the immigration policies from the Trump administration. Donald Trump listens to the president of Apple, Tim Cook, and he talks during the Technology Council in the White House. Anyhow, London, United Kingdom, Jimmy Diamond, with everybody as part of the employees.
Every year, I cannot and will not tell the British people how they should vote on this. But I do want to...
Every year here we have something to do, and we have plenty of things to do in order to recover our positioning within the market. Anyhow, this is the CEO of Enris. And the very important people of this round table is a pressure group that is presided by Diamond, who we saw right now, and the Business Roundtable has been discussing the immigration policy for many years. The letter was motivated by regulatory actions, which were specific taken by the citizen reports and immigration services. And this will generate an eligibility to be able to authorize the spouses. In other words, that if a man's working here, they can bring their family. The sanctions are increasing significantly. The possibility that a long-term employee that has followed the rules and which has authorized the government of the United States to legally work here in order to be able to work in the United States. Now, he may lose that status that he has gained. Well, whatever the case may be, the situation is not calming in all situations. There's a dispute with Turkey and the United States for not weakening their paper in the transatlantic treaty. The advisor from Albright, Stormbridge Group, in the interview stated they have a midterm election on the 6th of November. This is a critical mission for the President Trump because he needs to win in order to be able to govern effectively during the rest of his period of the following 2 years and to be able to be re-elected in 2020. Acros, the advisors of Albright Stonebridge, which is an advisory group at a high level in politics, stated, obviously these commercial wars and these ultimatums for any countries, including Turkey, China, or Russia, are not acceptable.
Is not acceptable. So what
President Trump pretty much did is prospering in another order where we will have the United States and the rest of countries from the European Union, India, China, Russia, and Turkey could accept what they have done or not accept it. We have the Turkish flag, and Hakan Ahbaz, the advisor of Albright Stormers Group, states, we are talking about high technology aspects, but Turkey is part of NATO. The purchase of S-400s on behalf of Turkey or the union of Turkey with Russia in Syria has a lot of propaganda value, but I think that Ankara is aware that Turkey is a lot more safe and they have more value for Russia, diplomatically speaking. And they will be a very strong member of NATO still.
It stays as a very strong NATO member.
Very well, we are in Capitol in Washington. And the story is that the relationship between Turkey and the United States is more complicated, and it could cause the transatlantic treaty, according to a Turkish analyst. They are inviting Iran and Russia, the United Nations that is, to speak about Syria during the following month. And here we have Alessandra Bellucci in the United Nations building. Stefan de Mistura, the special envoy, is talking about the consultation about the Syrian team, which is facilitated by the UN in the Geneva process in accordance to Resolution 2254 of 2015 of the Security Council. And in this text, the de Mistura envoy has invited Iran, Turkey, and the Russian Federation for public consultation in Geneva on 11th and 12th of September of 2018 in order to be able to work in the Constitutional Committee of the case. The journalists during the press conference, we have Special de Mistura, who invited Iran, Russia, and Turkey to talk about the Constitutional Committee of Syria on the 11th and 12th of September. Those conversations may be useful for something. We have a second group of North and South Korean families that are joining after the Korean War. Decades after the Korean War in 1950s, now they can be reunited after the division in Parallel 38. That broke the heart of many, many people. 79 years old, 80 years old, and other people have died and they cannot be reunited with their family. They asked me, what about him? Close family members, and they already passed away. And these news produce these extremely grueling images. Very well, the division of Korea is still a drama after the Cold War and after the Korean War in the 1950s, which was one of the biggest retreats of the winners of the World War. The four-star generals had to retreat very shamefully, and they had to make a deal in Parallel 38. There's no peace treaty, just an armistice. Where is my mother? We are together finally, but where's my father? The family, Chongye, 81 years old. Some people come from the United States where they have emigrated to see what they know of family members that were left behind once the Koreas were divided. 78 years old is the average age. At least they still have the opportunity to share a hug. 85 years, Jung-hwa from North Korea and his son walking. They are holding family photographs. Where are they? Have they died? Are they still alive? And this reunited is what the drama is left from the Korean War. Chen Yong-ho, who is 88 years old of North Korea. The son is in South Korea. His sister is 80 years old. They touch each other. They cry. We have a 67-year-old Korean when he was very young, and he said, "What happened to our mother?" We had a call 50 days later, and she had died. We have done this quicker. We have been waiting for close to 68 years. He is holding her brother's hand, who is 89 years old. They're sharing photographs. Very youthful family members back then. The second groups of separated families from North and South Korea were reunited today on Friday, 24th of August, after they were destroyed for more than 6 decades as a consequence of the Korean War of 1950 to 1953. More than 300 South Koreans of 81 families were able to embrace their family members from the North in the tourist complex of the North. And they had 3-day meetings according to what Kim Jong-un established, and the South Koreans Korean President Moon Jae-in said during their first summit in April. The families which were separated for decades were subject to the attacks by the neighbors, and Pyongyang is going through their missile program as a dissuasive program in order for there not to be another war. At least 332,000 people are part of the separated families. The information that is happening right now, we have deaths and injured people when a bus gets attacked in Finland, and this is very strange because Finland works very well. We have photographs from rescue workers near the bus, and we have the security barriers that are damaged and officers there. The story is that 4 people died and 20 were injured when a bus collided with 5 automobiles. Now we go to Italy. The spokesperson of the Commission of Europe, during a press conference, stated the following. So finding a solution for the people on board is our main solution. We are also focused on what could be centered with everybody else. Let's not be dedicated to point fingers at anybody. We also believe that comments are not constructive and threats are not useful, and they will not get us closer to a solution. The EU is a community with rules, and they operate on rules, not on threats. The spokesperson, Alexander Wittgenstein, stated, in Europe, the threats which are futile do not lead you anywhere. The only way to solve problems in Europe is working together in a way that is constructive, to be able to have goodwill to do this, and this is what the Commission is trying to facilitate during a very long time and doing it right now. There is a very clear legal obligation, and the member states have always fulfilled with that legal obligation. And how will this work practically? In practice, the member states are called to be able to pay a part 1/12 of the budget contribution. The European Commission will follow the regulations that are part of this and will not go under the threats of the Italian minister for the immigrants that are part of a boat. This is not a way that you treat immigrants that risk their life in the Mediterranean. Luigi Di Maio stated that Italy will have a hard line in order to retain funds in a meeting with the Commission, and parts of the European countries were discussing the offland owning of the Chichoti boat, where there are plenty of immigrants that could not finish their trip from the north of Africa to the south of Europe, as is happening right now permanently. It is a drama which is very grueling. Let's see what else we have in our satellite monitors. I see them quite far away, and we do not have the best eyesight like I used to. Now, in reality, I think that one of those satellites is a little bit delayed from what we have, and the rest of the satellites do not have are something that is better than we have given. So we're going to go on commercial break like we had said, and we will back immediately with more news in full development. Do not move from your chairs. We will be right back, and we are going to do this immediately because we have a very interesting second block that we have just modified. We will be right back.
In South America and the Caribbean, we face challenges, looking for ways of contributing to solutions to the nations. With a uniting feeling, though before the attack of those imposing themselves, we defend an ideal of an inspiring struggle. We are together, preserving our traditions, integrated, being one South.
We are back with news in full development, and we have our memo from the Bolivarian Army from Dossier. It's the 30th training trip on the Friday of 24th of August. We have our operative activities. The Alfa Bravo Braco E11 vessel in the training journey is navigating with her motor in latitude 20 north, longitude 91 west. 0, 10, 20 on our map. And the longitude is 91. Here we have 90. And we are in this direction currently. And once again, we are back to the text from the memo. We are hoping to arrive on the 27th of August to Veracruz, which would be the 28th port that we are part of the cruise, and the regatta of the 2018 sail ship. It is a regatta of training vessels. The academic activities were as established by the Simón Bolívar study to be able to give the guards their own things with regards to cargo and the place where they put the cargo correctly, to have naval astronomic things, and speaking. We have astronomy as well, because in an emergency and in a lifeboat, being able to get oriented by the stars is very good, which is old school to do so of the very good navigators. We have the weather conditions. We have dispersed clouds, precipitation which is isolated, which has winds of 20 knots. The visibility is good and moderate. We have the waves of 1.5 meters, which is very, very low for this boat. We have our naval glossary. It is an instrument that measures the distance which has been navigated by the boat, and this is used in the navigation table. Resena Mordale Ortiz, the frigate captain, the officer Omejonio Mejia Ponte, the director of coordination and operational control, Alfonso Gregorio Melendez, counter-captain of the Bolivarian Army. And as they see us on satellite with our ambassador without borders, to them, have fantastic journey. And we are back to our block. There's nothing that changes what we had planned. And we do not have anything that is above this, but it's getting close to us. We have a spirit of body. What we have here is we are sharing our second block together. The chief of the environment of the UN recognizes the North Korean officers in Pyongyang. Look at how things are happening in Korea. The executive director for the UN Environment, directing Eric Schlohem, on the left is walking towards the high officers. We have Tim from the delegation of NUMA and the coordinator of a president of the United Nations for North Korea. We have Tapan Mishra of the delegation of North Korean officers. We have the second one to the left, and they're talking about the North Korean officers and taking notes. We have the officers talking about Kim in North Korea, and they take notes. And we have the delegates of this in the meeting. And what they were talking about, this is that executive director of the United Nations for the Environment, Eric Schlohem, said that there has to be a lot more done in this. The main African officers are expecting more development opportunities with cooperation with China. The Chinese and Kenyan workers are talking with instructors, and the collaboration from China is very valuable for us, they say, because when you have the Chinese instructors training our young people, whether to drive trains or operate machinery, that for us is extremely important, because we are having very young people that are more capable.
Whether to drive those trains or to operate those machines, that is, to us, is very, very important, because it will create a peace.
Now we are going to see the train station in Mombasa, the new trains that are running at very high speeds, and we have a very big pride for all of the people in Africa. And in reality, we have international cooperation in works of very, very big interest for the population. Rob Marc Christian Lacabore, the president of Burkina Faso, stated, "This trip to China is a very important task for us. Not only would it consolidate the negotiation between both countries, but it will impulse cooperation for China in the sub-region and in whole Africa." Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Here we have a development of the news. We have Harare in Zimbabwe, Addis Ababa, the headquarters. Shimon Kayamoya states that the Interior Minister and the Foreign Ministry says we have to keep on promoting our cooperation in other areas with an interchange of visits as much as is possible in order to know each other better. We want the people of different levels to interact with our brothers from China. We have Harare in Zimbabwe and Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. There we have the African in the summit, and we are in the Celestial Peace Highway and the entrance to the Forbidden City in Beijing. The summit in Beijing is focused to improve multilateral cooperation between China and Africa, and the Burkina Faso president For Burkina Faso, my visit to China will be a very important mission. The visit will strengthen the links of cooperation between our countries based on the principles of mutual benefit, equality, and transparency. We think that they are going to improve the cooperation with Burkina Faso, and the whole African continent will improve with China. Rochmar Pichard Kabor, the president of Burkina Faso, stated that the summit of Beijing with the FCO-ACS will promote it in order to have multilateral cooperation that will be under our joint cooperation. The growing protectionism has become a threat for world peace, and as such the summit will be very successful, and it will declare our election in multilateralism and not to protectionism.
C'est pourquoi, pour nous, la tenue de ce sommet est un vrai succès pour indiquer à ceux qui sont dans les politiques protectionnistes.
And then Rishan Kabor, the president of Burkina Faso, stated, "We are seeing the Belt and Road as a big initiative because it tries to propel globalization, eliminate obstacles between the countries, and propel the commerce through the construction of infrastructure, including train lines and highways which are linked to the aspects of our development."
Qui peuvent être également liés, je dirais, à tous les aspects qui vont nous permettre donc de développer ce commerce entre les différents pays du monde. Et je pense que c'est une initiative à soutenir.
Scott Morrison swore this day as the first Australian Prime Minister, but right now we have the bilateral of mutual interest. And we are signing the respective agreements. And in this sense, we are now with Scott Morrison, who today swore as the first Australian Prime Minister. And the first Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, we are in the other side of the world. And he is walking to be able to join with the Commonwealth, Peter Cosgrove, and the General Governor of the Commonwealth States, Mr. Morrison. I invite you to sign or take the oath as the Prime Minister of Australia.
I, Scott
John Morrison, swear that I will truly serve the people of Australia in the office of the Prime Minister. I will be faithful to His Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia, and in this way, may God help me. Morrison and Cosgrove are sitting together, and they have a very simple oath that went on right now. They sign after making the oath. Now they do it in written writing, and then they stand up, and as is traditional, they shake their hand, and a new government begins. We have a very big Australia in the other part of the world.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Plenty of Latin Americans live in Australia, and in the River of La Plata, there are plenty of people that are extremely qualified in order to be able to develop that foreign country. And they have already settled down and have their own lives there. Very well. This means that the Prime Minister Peter Cosgrove, after his oath, Morrison was the treasurer of the exiting Prime Minister, and he came as the surprise winner in a challenge of three-way in order to lead the Liberal Party, which was presented by a right position. And we have somebody with a kippah.
Faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Queen of Australia, so help me God.
Morrison Frydenberg is now receiving all of the treatments to carry out the full government. And he is the leader of having the leader of the parliament in Australia, the national government, Michael McCormack, next to Morrison and Frydenberg, representing the opportunity for a photograph. This is the new government that is emerging, which has already been authorized by Her Majesty the Queen. The general government, Peter Cosgrove, swore, a new Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and the new leader said that there was going to be a generational change in the Liberal Party. Here we have the photograph. And he became the sixth Australian Prime Minister in less than 10 years. He has a coalition between the Liberal and National Party, whose majority is only of one. We have Angela Merkel, who went to the capital of Armenia, in Erevan. They are receiving her with a red carpet, with a military band and a guard of honor. This is an important diplomatic play. We have with Mr. Pashijan. He is receiving her and greeting her as a madam with flowers. We have a guard of honor and a military band. We have Deutschland, Deutschland über alles playing in the background. Merkel and Pashijan are walking within the airport. They are talking informally for now. The German Chancellor went to Erevan in Armenia as part of her three-day trip on the region, and she was greeted with all of the highest honors. She was going to have a conversation with the Armenian president and also visit the commemorative memorial for the victims of the Armenian genocide. We have a river that overflows as a hurricane hits Hawaii with very strong winds. The lovely islands under American domination are a small hell today. Huge cascades of water are flowing where you could previously have a walk. And the flow of various storms that have not been able to be controlled in the bank of this river, which is a presentation of what's happening in those islands that are associated with vacations and with Pearl Harbor attack. The Hurricane Lane is a very strong storm with very torrential rains causing flooding, which was very quick, and this caused a lot of furious waves. And residents were trying to escape towards to get refuge where they would be able to do this. The storm was created in the Pacific Ocean next to Yacona Island, and 51 centimeters of precipitation fell on the big islands, according to the National Meteorological System. The problem was that they were very quick. There was no people who were there, but there were roads that were closed, and there was a lot of rain, as you can see. And the tourists from the Pacific and the United States were recommended to keep away from a popular attraction of Maui Island called Seven Sacred Pools, which is a group of cascades and routes. And there were cataracts and not pools anymore. The first predictions showed the anger of the storm that were turning to the west on the 24th of August in the morning, and they're going past Maui, and other islands in Oahu were also affected. However, the authorities had made a warning that the islands could be hit once again with more rain. We have German firemen who have able to fight the forest fire close to Berlin. A forest fire that has not been explained up to now. The helicopters collaborated transporting water and chemical elements, flying through the lines of trees and the foliage, and there's still smoke from this enormous tragedy at an environmental level. We have the woods that were very well seen have suffered a lot. The Ministry of the Interior of the Transport of Brandenburg, Karl-Heinz Schröter, stated that he is reaching the center of operations, and Schröter is walking with the rescue officers. 2 helicopters will also use to be able to send water and chemical elements towards the fire that were still being fanned by the wind. And the Ministry of the Interior of Brandenburg, Karl-Heinz Schröter, stated that, fortunately, the forest fires of this year do not happen every single day. But the very orderly disposition was useful in order to have an immediate and technical response. However, the fire was voracious. Some people are afraid that they're going to receive political gains from this. Karl-Heinz Schröter stated, fortunately, the forest fires of this magnitude do not happen on a daily basis, but the extreme dryness is contributed to this. We are doing as much as possible to recover control. The firemen in Germany are putting their best effort, and they recovered control. Let's go back to Brexit, which calls an interruption with or without a deal. This is the headquarters of the EU. We are in Brussels in a press conference. Alexander Winterstein, the spokesperson of the EU. As we already said, we are continuously working and constructively working to be able to reach an agreement, and we are working in this sense. It is also clear that the leaving from the UK will interrupt whether we get an agreement or we have no deal. That's why everybody, and particularly the economic operators, have to be prepared. And in this context of this preparation, we have published close to 70 wordings of preparation, which are specific for each of one of the sectors of the economy.
At many fronts, and for many people, citizens, businesses, operators.
The United Kingdoms will have consequences in various fronts for many people, citizens, businesses, operators, and the objective of all this negotiation is to avoid harm or mitigate harm and the repercussion of this in order to be able to have an exit. They have advisory in the way that is best possible. The Tribunal of Zimbabwe confirms Mnangagwa as the president of said tribunal. He is the chief, Lukemalawa, who is sitting down. The chief of Zimbabwe says the tribunal considers that the petitioner has not presented direct proof which is credible that there was irregularities that happening, that according to him caused there to be a problem with this election. In other words, there was no proof of these irregularities. As we can see, we have the justice of the old British Empire with wigs and with the garments that were typical back then. Zimbabwe Lukemalawa said that the tribunal is not the one that directs the elections, it's the people, and the tribunal has to take that into account and keep the position given by the people so that they can express their will. That's why the request will not be taken into account. The result is done in this way. The request is not allowed with regards to Section 90, paragraph 20, paragraph of the Constitution. Emerson Manguso Mangwanga, who declared that he won the elections correctly on the 30th of June of 2018. As was indicated, in due time there would be a full case in this.
In terms of Section 93, subsection 4,
the Tribunal Constitution of Zimbabwe confirmed today the dispute of the electoral victor of Emerson Mnangagwa, and they dismiss with cause what the opposition has said. And in a unanimous decision, the biggest tribunal of the country, of the Supreme, Luque Malawa, stated that the opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, had not proven the fraud. Emerson Dambusa Mnangagwa has declared the circumstances is the winner of the presidential elections, which happened on the 30th of July 2018 in his decision. The elections of Mnangagwa Chamisa were the main contenders, which promoted a crucial step towards the economic recovery. We have Mexico that is advancing with regards to commerce through the United States, according to the Minister of Economy. Can you tell me where we are standing in the clause? Because I have to remind you the purpose during our first 5 weeks, which has been to resolve the majority of the problems between Mexico and the United States. I have been speaking with you, and it's clear that these problems have been solved. Are you advancing in that list of things that were you? Yes, of course, and we're advancing quite far down. Do you believe that these will be solved? As you know, unfortunately, even when we are fully committed, there are still last-minute things between one and the objectives that have been set. The Ministry of Economy of Mexico, Guajardo, is walking into the building with the commercial representatives of the United States. We have Luis de Garay, who is walking into the building as a commercial representative of the United States. The advisor, Jared Kushner, is walking towards the building as well. And the story is that Mexico has gone far down in the list of their bilateral affairs with the United States in modernizing the treaty of the United States and Mexico, according to the Mexican Minister of Economy. The Chilean police uses a water cannon against people that are protesting. What do they want? They want the youth law for work to be dismissed because they will not be able to use as a medium for big companies to be used. The call now is for us to be mobilized here in the Plaza de Armas because we will not allow for the companies to be enriching themselves using our dreams and efforts as young people. They are carrying the flag and the image of the Chilean Minister of Labor, Nicolás Mottenberg, as a clown. We want for them to remove this law because we will not be the force to be able to make him richer. Today we have mobilized to the Plaza de Armas because we will not allow for the companies to become rich on our work. The government states that their measures will improve the national employment rate in youth populations. The students state that this law will eliminate the laws for the youth people and will generate a pressure on the youth workers, because in Chile, even in this century, they do not have free education. It's incredible and shameful. In Venezuela, like in Uruguay, which has always been an example of this, since kindergarten to the postgraduate studies, everything is free. But in Chile, they live in this reality, which is shameful. Very well, so this is the panorama of our lovely, contaminated, and only spaceship. There's still 1 minute, and I'm going to review the satellite monitors. I think that we are extremely ahead of the news that is happening. We are not missing anything of today's news. So up to here, we have our edition today, Friday. Thank God it's Friday today. Shabbat Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum, Paz Vopis. Remember, those are the peace wishes from the base 3 religions that we live in peace. It does not happen the same thing which happens in other latitudes and longitudes, but in this graceful land we can be proud of this. This, the agnostics and the materialists, and every single one can live in peace and enjoy this wonderful earth, wherever you may be on the other side of the screen. Thank you for allowing us to be there with you. From studio number 3 of Venezolana Televisión, VTV, Victor Tango Victor, the channel which was a pioneer of Venezuelan television, because we went from Channel 5 of Cerro Marin, where I began in 1970 to present my television show. And since then, we have felt extreme pride of having you come to this, not only in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, but everywhere in our lovely, beloved, contaminated, and only spaceship. Because wherever we do not have satellites, we have webpage and internet connections. And once again, I want to say hello to the people that see us in the University of Osaka. I am Walter Martinez, producer and anchor of Dossier. I will see you on Monday, God willing. Do not come into the statistics. Team, how did this end up? Well, how? Very well. And may that be it. Director, the floor is yours.